The Great Chamber of the Galactic Council was the largest room in the known universe. It floated at the center of a space station bigger than most moons, and inside it sat representatives from 12 different species. They had come from worlds scattered across 400 star systems. Some had scales. Some had feathers. Some had skin that changed color with their moods. But today, they all shared the same expression. They were worried. High Arbiter Velenkai stood at the center of the chamber. He was old, even by the standards of his long-lived species. His body was thin and gray, and his eyes glowed with a soft golden light. He had led the council for 600 years, and in all that time, he had never seen his colleagues so nervous. "We must discuss the humans," he said. His voice was calm, but it carried to every corner of the room. The chamber went silent. Even the air seemed to stop moving. The humans. That single word was enough to make the bravest warriors in the galaxy uncomfortable. For 200 years, the Council had watched Earth from a distance. They had placed satellites around the small blue planet, recording everything. They had seen the humans discover electricity. They had seen them build flying machines. They had seen them split the atom and use it to destroy 2 of their own cities. Most species took 10,000 years to go from fire to space travel. The humans had done it in less than 300. They were fast. Too fast. And that made the Council afraid. "They have detected our satellites," said Representative Zell of the Karate Federation. Her scales flashed an angry red. "It is only a matter of time before they try to leave their system." "We must act." "And do what?" asked another representative, a small furry creature named Brel. "Destroy them? Contain them? They have nuclear weapons. They might use them on themselves if we threaten them." "Then we must make contact," said Velenkai. "We must send an ambassador. Someone who can speak to them, learn about them, and help us decide what to do." The chamber erupted in argument. Some wanted war. Some wanted peace. Some wanted to simply forget about the humans and hope they destroyed themselves, as many primitive species did. But one voice cut through the noise. "I will go." Everyone turned to look at the speaker. He was tall and elegant, with pale blue skin and silver eyes that reflected the light like mirrors. His name was Tarvan Shell, and he was the most respected diplomat in the galaxy. He had made first contact with 37 species. He had ended wars with nothing but words. If anyone could handle the humans, it was him. "Ambassador," said Velenkai, "are you certain? This mission is dangerous. The humans are unpredictable." Torvan smiled. It was a gentle expression, full of confidence. "I have faced angry warriors and suspicious kings. I have walked into battle zones and walked out with peace treaties. I am not afraid of one small planet." The council voted, and it was decided. Torvan would go to Earth. He would make contact with the humans, and he would return with a recommendation: peace, containment, or war. 3 days later, Torvan's ship, the Gentle Dawn, broke through the ring of monitoring satellites and began its descent toward Earth. The ship was beautiful, all smooth curves and soft lights. It was designed to look peaceful, non-threatening. Torvan had used it many times before. He watched through the window as Earth grew larger. It was a pretty planet, he thought. Blue oceans, green land, white clouds. It looked so peaceful from up here. But Torvan had seen the recordings. He knew what happened on the surface. His ship landed in a desert, on a flat stretch of concrete surrounded by metal buildings. The humans called this place Nevada. They had chosen it because it was far from their cities, far from the people who might panic at the sight of an alien vessel. Torvan took a deep breath and opened the door. The heat hit him first. It was dry and intense, nothing like the cool mists of his home world. He stepped out onto the concrete and looked around. There were humans everywhere. Soldiers in green uniforms stood in neat rows, holding weapons. Vehicles with large guns pointed at his ship. In the sky above, flying machines circled like hungry birds, but directly in front of him stood just two people. The first was a man. He was not tall, but he stood with the confidence of someone who had seen much and feared little. His hair was gray at the edges, and his eyes were steady and calm. He wore a uniform covered in medals and ribbons. The second was a woman. She was younger, with dark hair pulled back from her face. She held a small device in her hands and watched Torvan with curious eyes. Torvan raised one hand, palm outward. It was the gesture of peace his people had used for thousands of years. The man raised his hand as well. Then he spoke. "Welcome to Earth. I am Colonel Sam Porter. This is Dr. Linda Reyes. We have been expecting you." Torvan blinked. "Expecting me?" "For 60 years, said Dr. Reyes. Her voice was calm, almost friendly. "We detected your satellites when we first sent probes beyond our moon. We knew someone was watching. We have been preparing for this day ever since." Torvan felt something cold in his chest. 60 years. The humans had known about the Council for 60 years, and they had said nothing. They had simply watched and waited and prepared. He looked at the soldiers, at the weapons, at the flying machines overhead. He thought about the nuclear bombs he knew were hidden in bunkers around the planet. He thought about the submarines in the oceans, each one carrying enough firepower to destroy a continent. The humans were not surprised. They were ready. Colonel Porter smiled. It was not a threatening expression, but it was not entirely friendly either. It was the smile of someone playing a game, someone who had already thought 10 moves ahead. "Ambassador," he said, "we have much to show you, much to discuss. But first, let me say something." He took a step forward. His eyes never left Torvan's face. "We know you are here to judge us, to decide if we are worthy of joining your council, or if we are too dangerous to be allowed into the stars. We understand. We have been judging ourselves for a very long time." He paused. The desert wind blew sand across the concrete. "So judge us fairly, Ambassador. See us as we truly are. The good and the bad. The beautiful and the terrible. And then make your decision." Torvan looked at this small human. This creature, from a species that had existed for barely an eye blink compared to the great civilizations of the galaxy. And for the first time in his long career, he felt something he had never felt before. He felt uncertain. "Very well," Torvan said. "Show me everything." Colonel Porter nodded. "Follow me." And so began the most important diplomatic mission in the history of the galaxy. And Torvanshell, the greatest ambassador the Council had ever known, had no idea that it would change him forever. The first place they took him was a hospital. Torvan had seen medical facilities before, on dozens of worlds. They were usually clean, quiet places where the sick went to be healed by machines and medicines. He expected the human hospital to be the same. He was wrong. The building was large and white, filled with bright lights and strange smells. People rushed through the hallways, some in white coats, others in colored clothes covered with patterns. Machines beeped and hummed. Somewhere, a baby was crying. Dr. Reyes walked beside him, explaining everything. "This is one of our best hospitals. We bring the most difficult cases here." They stopped outside a room with a large window. Inside, Torvan could see a small human lying on a table. A child, he realized. Very young. Wires and tubes connected the child to machines, and several adults in masks stood around the table. "What are they doing?" Torvan asked. "The child was born with a broken heart," Dr. Reyes said. "The organ that pumps blood through the body. Without surgery, she will die." As Torvan watched, One of the adults picked up a small knife and cut open the child's chest. Torvald stepped back, horrified. They are cutting her open while she lives? Yes, it is the only way to fix the problem. But the pain, the risk, she feels nothing. We have medicines that make her sleep. And yes, there is risk. She might die on that table. But if we do nothing, she will certainly die. Dr. Reese looked at Torvald with steady eyes. So we try. We always try. They watched for an hour. Torvald saw the doctors reach inside the child's chest with their bare hands. He saw them cut and stitch and repair. And at the end, he saw the child's heart begin to beat again, strong and steady. The doctors cheered. Some of them cried. Why do you cry? Torvald asked. You succeeded. One of the doctors, a woman with tired eyes, heard his question. She pulled down her mask and smiled at him. Because it matters, she said. Every single one matters. The next stop was a building full of old things. Dr. Reyes called it a museum. She said humans kept their history here, so they would never forget where they came from. Torvald walked through rooms filled with paintings and statues, tools and weapons. He saw the story of humanity laid out before him, from caves to cities, from stone axes to flying machines. Then they entered a darker section. The lights were dim here, and the air felt heavy. This is our war history, Colonel Porter said. He had been quiet for most of the tour, but now he spoke. We do not hide this. We put it where everyone can see. Torvald saw pictures of battlefields covered with dead bodies. He saw ruined cities, nothing but broken stones and ash. He saw thin, starving people behind fences, their eyes empty of hope. He saw a great cloud shaped like a mushroom, rising over a city that had existed only seconds before. You did this? Torvald whispered. To your own kind? Yes. Colonel Porter's voice was flat, without emotion. We have done terrible things to each other. We have killed millions. We have tortured and starved and burned. We have used weapons that poisoned the earth for generations. Why do you show me this? Because it is part of who we are. The colonel turned to face Torvald. We are not innocent. We are not pure. We have darkness inside us that has caused more suffering than you can imagine. If you are going to judge us, you must see all of us, not just the good parts. They walked through more rooms. Torvald saw images of something called the Holocaust, where humans had murdered 6 million of their own people simply because of their beliefs. He saw the slave ships packed with human beings treated like cargo. He saw the bombs falling on cities, the children running from fire, the mass graves. And under each display, there was a sign. The words were different, but the meaning was the same. Never again. Never forget. Never allow this to happen once more. You keep these memories, Torvald said, so you will not repeat them? We try, Dr. Reyes said softly. We do not always succeed, but we try. The third stop was a building where humans waited to run into fire. Torvald did not understand at first. The building was simple, with large vehicles painted red and humans sitting around playing games and laughing. They seemed relaxed, happy. Then a loud sound filled the air, and everything changed. The humans jumped up and ran to the vehicles. They put on heavy clothes and helmets. The vehicles roared to life, and within seconds, they were racing down the street, lights flashing and sirens screaming. Fire station, Colonel Porter explained. When buildings burn, these people go to save those inside. They followed in a car. When they arrived at the burning building, Torvald saw flames pouring from the windows. The heat was intense, and the smoke was so thick he could barely breathe. But the humans in heavy clothes ran straight toward it. There are people trapped on the 3rd floor, someone shouted. 2 adults, 3 children. Without hesitation, 3 humans ran into the building. They disappeared into the smoke and fire. Torvald watched in horror. "They will die in there." "Maybe," said a human standing nearby. He was older, with gray hair and a lined face. "Maybe not. But they will try to save those people. That is their job. That is their choice." Minutes passed. They felt like hours. The building groaned and cracked. Part of the roof fell in. Then, through the smoke, figures appeared. The 3 firefighters carrying the 2 adults and 3 children. They stumbled out of the building just as another section collapsed behind them, but Torvald counted. Only 2 firefighters came out. "Where is the 3rd? He asked. The older human's face went pale. "Danny." He went back. He thought he heard someone else inside. They waited. The building burned. And Danny did not come out. An hour later, they found his body under a fallen beam. He had died trying to reach a room that turned out to be empty. He had died for nothing. But as Torvald watched the other firefighters weep over their fallen friend, he realized something. To them, Danny had not died for nothing. He had died because he refused to give up. He had died because he could not walk away while there might be someone who needed help. Dr. Reyes stood beside Torvald. Her eyes were wet with tears. "This is who we are," she said quietly. "We do terrible things. We kill and destroy and hate. But we also run into burning buildings to save strangers. We cut open children to fix their hearts. We keep our darkest history on display so we never forget." She turned to face him. "We are monsters and heroes, often at the same time. We are the worst and the best the universe has to offer. And we are still trying to become better." Torvald looked at the burning building, at the weeping firefighters, at the family Danny had saved. He thought about the child whose heart now beat strong and steady. He thought about the museums filled with horror and the signs that said never again. And he realized that he did not understand these creatures at all. "I need to see more," he said. Colonel Porter nodded. "Then we will show you more." That night, they took Torvald to a room deep underground. The walls were thick concrete, and there were no windows. Armed guards stood at every door. This was where humans kept their secrets, he realized. This was where they made their important decisions. A long table filled the center of the room. Around it sat humans of different ages and appearances. Some wore military uniforms covered with medals. Others wore simple suits. There was one very old woman with white hair and sharp eyes, and a young man who could not stop tapping his fingers on the table. Colonel Porter introduced them. There were generals and scientists, politicians and philosophers. They had come from different countries, different beliefs, different lives. But tonight, they were united in a single purpose. They wanted to understand the aliens. And they wanted the aliens to understand them. "Please," said the old woman. Her name was Senator Carol Webb, and she had been a leader among humans for 40 years. "We have questions for you, Ambassador. And we suspect you have questions for us." Torvald sat down. The chair was uncomfortable, designed for a human body, not his. But he said nothing about it. "Ask your questions," he said. Senator Webb leaned forward. "Your Galactic Council has existed for 3,000 years. In all that time, how many wars have you fought?" "2 major conflicts," Torvald answered. "Both were ended within a decade. The Council maintains peace through careful management. We identify threats early and deal with them before they grow." "Deal with them how?" asked General Diane Okoye. She was a tall woman with dark skin and eyes that missed nothing. Torvald hesitated. He had told this story many times before, and most species accepted it without question. But something about these humans made him nervous. "Aggressive species are contained," he said carefully. "Their technology is limited. Their expansion is controlled. If they refuse to cooperate, they are relocated." "Relocated where?" to reserve systems, quarantine zones, places where they cannot threaten others. The room was silent for a moment. Then the young man who had been tapping his fingers spoke up. His name was Dr. Kevin Cho, and he was one of the smartest humans alive. Ambassador, how many species have been relocated? 47. And how many have been released? Torvan did not answer. He could not answer, because the truth was that no species had ever been released from the quarantine zones. Once you went in, you never came out. General Coy stood up and walked to a screen on the wall. She pressed a button and images began to appear. Ships, hundreds of ships, in different shapes and sizes. Some floated in space. Others sat in hidden bases on Earth, weapons platforms, satellites, things Torvan did not recognize, but that looked dangerous. We have been preparing for this meeting for 60 years, the general said. Since we first detected your satellites, we knew you were watching. We knew you would come eventually. So we got ready. More images appeared. Factories building machines. Scientists working in secret laboratories. Soldiers training in harsh environments. Everything hidden, everything secret. Everything pointed toward the stars. We are not a quarantine species, General Okoy continued. We will not be contained. We will not be relocated. We will meet you as equals, or we will not meet you at all. Torvan felt his heart beating faster. Yes, hearts plural. His species had 2 of them, and right now both were pounding in his chest. You would fight the council? He asked. You would start a war you cannot win? We have done it before, Colonel Porter said. He was standing in the corner, arms crossed, watching everything. Our history is full of times when we faced enemies stronger than ourselves. We did not always win, but we never surrendered. We never gave up. Senator Webb raised her hand, and the room fell silent. Ambassador, she said, we do not want war. We want peace. We want to join your council, to learn from you, to share what we have learned. But we will not do it on our knees. We will not accept being treated as children or criminals. She stood up, and despite her age, she seemed to tower over the room. We know what we are. We are violent and dangerous and unpredictable. We have done terrible things to ourselves and to our world. But we are also curious and creative and determined. We have gone from caves to spaceships in the blink of an eye. We have cured diseases that killed millions. We have built wonders that would have seemed like magic to our ancestors. She walked around the table until she stood in front of Torvan. Judge us if you must, but judge us fairly. See the darkness and the light. See the cruelty and the compassion. And then decide if you want us as friends or enemies. She smiled. And it was the most frightening thing Torvan had ever seen. Because I promise you, Ambassador, you do not want us as enemies. Torvan looked around the room. He saw determination in every face. These creatures, these short-lived, fragile beings, were not afraid of the Galactic Council. They were not afraid of anything. No, that was wrong. They were afraid. He could see it in their eyes, smell it in the air. They were terrified, but they were going to face that terror anyway. I have a question, Torvan said slowly. Ask, said Senator Webb. Why do you fight so hard? Why do you refuse to give up, even when the odds are against you? My species lives for 500 years. Yours lives for barely 80. You are small and weak and alone in a galaxy full of things that could destroy you. Why do you keep struggling? The room was silent. Then Colonel Porter laughed. It was a short, harsh sound. You want to know why we fight? He walked to the table and placed his hands flat on the surface. We fight because we have to. Because no one else will fight for us. Because we have children and parents and friends, and we refuse to let them be taken away. He looked directly into Torvan's eyes. We fight because that is what it means to be human. We face the darkness and we do not blink. We fall down and we get back up. We lose and we keep trying until we win. He straightened up. You have watched us for 200 years. You have seen our wars and our cruelty. But you have also seen us survive everything the universe has thrown at us. Ice ages, plagues. We even survived ourselves. He smiled, and there was something wild in his eyes. So go back to your council, Ambassador. Tell them what you have seen. Tell them about the crazy little species on the crazy little planet that refuses to die. And tell them this. He leaned forward. We are coming. Sooner or later, we are coming to the stars. And when we get there, we will either be your friends or your worst nightmare. The choice is yours. Torvald sat in silence for a long time. His minds were racing, trying to process everything he had seen and heard. These humans were terrifying, not because of their weapons or their determination, but because of something deeper. They had hope. Despite everything, despite all the darkness in their history, they still believed tomorrow could be better than today, Don, and that, Tarvin realized, was the most dangerous thing of all. I need to think, he said finally. I need time to understand. Senator Webb nodded. Take all the time you need, Ambassador. We have waited 60 years for this conversation. We can wait a little longer. But as Torvald left the underground room, he could feel their eyes on his back, watching, waiting ready for whatever came next. On his last day on Earth, Torvald made a request. He wanted to see ordinary humans, not soldiers or politicians, not scientists or generals. Just regular people living their regular lives. Colonel Porter looked surprised. Are you sure? We can show you more of our military, our technology, things that might be more useful for your report. I have seen enough of those things, Torvald said. I want to see how your people live, how they think, what matters to them. So they took him to a small town in the middle of the country. The humans called the area Kansas. It was flat and green, with fields of tall plants stretching to the horizon. The town itself was tiny compared to the cities Torvald had seen. Just a few streets, some small buildings, and people going about their business. They gave him clothes to wear over his blue skin and something to cover his silver eyes. From a distance, he almost looked human. Almost. He walked down the main street, watching everything. A woman was sweeping the sidewalk in front of a shop. Two old men sat on a bench, arguing about something and laughing. Children ran past, chasing each other and screaming with joy. It was so normal. So peaceful. So different from the war rooms and weapons he had seen. He stopped at a small building with a sign that said, Betty's Diner. Through the window, he could see people sitting at tables, eating and talking. His stomach reminded him that he had not eaten human food yet. Inside, the diner was warm and smelled of cooking meat and something sweet. A woman behind the counter looked up when he entered. She was old, with white hair and a face full of wrinkles, but her eyes were bright and kind. Well, hello there, she said. I don't think I've seen you around here before. Just passing through? Yes, Torvald said carefully. His translator was good, but he still worried about making mistakes. I am traveling, seeing your country. That's wonderful. Sit anywhere you like, honey. I'm Betty. I'll bring you a menu. Torvald sat at a small table by the window. Betty brought him a piece of paper covered with writing and pictures of food. He had no idea what most of it was. You look a little lost, Betty said with a smile. First time in a place like this? Yes, very first time. Well, let me help you. Our pie's famous around here. Best in 3 counties. You like sweet things? Torvald nodded, though he was not entirely sure what pie was. A few minutes later, Betty placed a plate in front of him. On it was a triangle of something golden brown with red stuff inside and white cream on top. "Apple pie with whipped cream," Betty said proudly. "Made it myself this morning." Torvan took a small bite. The taste was unlike anything he had experienced. Sweet and warm and somehow comforting. He took another bite, then another. Betty laughed. "I knew you'd like it. You've got that look. Same look my grandson gets when he visits." She sat down across from him, even though there were other customers waiting. "So where are you from? You've got an accent I can't quite place." "Very far away," Torvan said. "A different country." "Well, welcome to America. Welcome to Kansas. We're simple folks here, but we're friendly. You need anything, you just ask." She patted his hand and went back to work. Torvan sat there, eating his pie and watching the world go by outside the window. After he finished, he walked through the town. He saw a father teaching his young son to ride a two-wheeled vehicle. The boy kept falling, but each time he got back up and tried again. The father was patient, encouraging, never angry. "You almost had it that time," the father said. "One more try." The boy climbed back on. He wobbled, nearly fell, then suddenly found his balance. He rode down the street, laughing and shouting, "Dad, look! I'm doing it." The father's face was full of pride. "That's my boy. That's my boy." Torvan watched until they disappeared around a corner. Something was happening inside him, something he did not fully understand. Later, he sat on a bench in a small park. Children played on climbing structures while their parents watched. Birds sang in the trees. The sun was warm on his covered face. A young man sat down next to him. He was maybe 20 years old, with messy brown hair and curious eyes. "Hey," the young man said. "You're the visitor everyone's talking about, right? The one from really far away." Torvan tensed. "How did you know?" The young man shrugged. "Small town. Word gets around. Plus, no offense, but you walk kind of weird. Like you're not used to gravity or something." He grinned. "Don't worry. I'm not going to make a big deal about it. I'm Jake. Torvan. Cool name. So where are you from? Like, really from?" Torvan hesitated. But something about this young man made him want to tell the truth. "Very far away," he said. "Beyond your sky. Beyond your stars." Jake's eyes went wide. "Wait, you mean like actual space? You're an actual alien?" "Yes." Jake stared at him for a long moment. Then he laughed. "That's the coolest thing I've ever heard." "What's it like?" "Out there, I mean. Are there other planets? Other people?" "Many. The universe is very large." "Wow." Jake looked up at the sky, even though it was daytime and no stars were visible. "I always wondered, if there was anyone else out there. If we were alone." "You are not alone," Torvan said. "You never were. That's kind of nice to know." Jake smiled. It was a simple, honest expression. "Do you think we'll ever get to meet them? The other people out there?" "I do not know. Perhaps. I hope so." Jake stood up and offered his hand. Torvan had learned this gesture. He reached out and shook it. "It was nice meeting you, Torvan. I hope you like our planet. It's not perfect, but it's home." He walked away, hands in his pockets, whistling a simple tune. Torvan watched him go. This young man, who had just learned that aliens existed, was not afraid. He was not angry or suspicious. He was just happy to know that the universe was bigger than he thought. That night, Torvan sat alone in the room the humans had given him. He pulled out his recording device and began to review everything he had captured. The hospital, the museum, the fire, the war room, but he kept coming back to other things. Betty and her pie. The father teaching his son to ride. Jake and his simple hope. He thought about the Council's files on humanity. Pages and pages of data about their wars, their weapons, their capacity for destruction. The files recommended quarantine. Possible relocation. The humans were too dangerous, too unpredictable, too fast. But the file said nothing about Betty's kindness to a stranger. Nothing about a father's patience with his falling son. Nothing about a young man who just wanted to see the stars. Torvald deleted his draft report and started again. He wrote about the darkness, the wars, the terrible things humans had done to each other. He wrote about their weapons and their determination and their refusal to surrender. But he also wrote about the light. The doctors who cut open children to save them. The firefighters who ran into burning buildings. The old woman who served pie to strangers. The boy who got back up every time he fell. He wrote about a species that contained both monsters and heroes, often in the same person. A species that remembered its worst moments so it could try to be better. A species that faced the darkness without blinking and still believed in tomorrow. When he finished, the sun was rising over Kansas. Golden light spilled across the fields, and somewhere a bird was singing. Torvald looked out the window at this strange, beautiful, terrifying world. And he realized that no matter what he recommended, the humans were going to change everything. The only question was how. The Galactic Council chamber was full when Torvald Shell returned. Representatives from all 12 species had gathered. Some had traveled for weeks to be here. Word had spread that the ambassador was back from Earth, and everyone wanted to hear what he had found. High Arbiter Valenkai stood at the center of the chamber, his golden eyes fixed on the entrance. He had known Torvald for 300 years. They had been friends once, long ago. But today, something was different. When Torvald walked into the chamber, his steps were slow and heavy. His silver eyes, which had always been so confident, now looked haunted. "Ambassador Shell," Valenkai said formally, "welcome back. We are eager to hear report on the human species." Torvald walked to the speaking platform. He stood there for a long moment, saying nothing. The chamber fell silent. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. "I have been a diplomat for 400 years, Torvald finally said. His voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "I have made first contact with 37 species. I have ended wars and built alliances. I thought I understood the universe." He looked up, and his eyes swept across the assembled representatives. "I was wrong." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Representative Zell of the Karate Federation leaned forward. "What do you mean, Ambassador? What did you find on Earth?" Torvald pressed a button on his device, and images began to appear on the great screens around the chamber. The council saw hospitals and battlefields, museums and cemeteries. They saw humans saving lives and taking them. They saw humans saving them. They saw fire and compassion, cruelty and kindness. "The humans are everything our files said," Torvald explained as the images changed. "They are violent. They are aggressive. They have weapons that could destroy entire worlds. They have killed millions of their own kind in wars fought over land and resources and ideas." More images. Nuclear explosions. Mass graves. Cities reduced to ash. They are dangerous. More dangerous than any species I have ever encountered. They grow faster than we thought possible. They adapt. They overcome. They simply do not know how to give up. The chamber was completely silent now. Every eye was fixed on the screens. Then the images changed again. The council saw doctors cutting open a child to save her life. They saw firefighters running into burning buildings. They saw an old woman serving pie to a stranger. They saw a father teaching his son to ride, picking him up every time he fell. "But they are also something else," Torvald said. His voice cracked slightly. They are a species that runs toward danger to save people they have never met. They keep monuments to their darkest moments so they will never forget. They hope for tomorrow even when today is filled with pain. He looked directly at Velen Kai. They know about us. They have known for 60 years. And instead of panicking, instead of giving up, they prepared. They built ships and weapons. They trained soldiers. They got ready. Ready for what? Asked Representative Brell, his small furry body trembling. Ready for anything. Torvan took a deep breath. Ready for us. He pulled up more data. Ship counts. Weapons statistics. Military forces. The numbers filled the screens, and the council members gasped. They cannot defeat us in open war, Torvan said. Our technology is too advanced, our numbers too great. But they would fight anyway. They would fight until every last one of them was dead. And they would take as many of us with them as they could. General Okoi's words echoed in his mind. We will not go quietly. Will you recommend, Ambassador? Velen Kai asked. His voice was carefully neutral, but Torvan could see the tension in his old friend's posture. Torvan was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke. I recommend that we leave them alone. The chamber erupted. Representatives shouted and argued. Some demanded war. Others demanded immediate quarantine. The noise was deafening. Velen Kai raised his hand and slowly the chamber fell quiet again. Explain, he said simply. Torvan nodded. We have contained 47 species over 3,000 years. We have put them in quarantine zones and watched them wither. We have controlled their technology and limited their growth. We have told ourselves it was for the greater good. He paused. But the humans will not wither. They will not accept limits. If we try to contain them, they will fight. And even if we win, even if we destroy them completely, we will have proven everything they fear about us. We will have proven that the galaxy is a place of control and oppression, not freedom and hope. He stepped forward, his silver eyes blazing. I have watched them for only a few days. I have seen their worst and their best. And I am telling you now, if we threaten them, if we try to control them, they will become exactly what we fear. They will unite against us with a fury we have never seen. They will not stop until they reach this very chamber. And they will not show mercy. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. I know this because I saw it in their eyes. Not just the soldiers and generals. The doctors. The firefighters. The old woman who served me pie. The young man who just wanted to see the stars. Every single one of them would fight. Every single one of them would die for each other. He turned to face the council directly. They call themselves humanity. And they are the most frightening thing I have ever encountered. The chamber was dead silent. Not because of their weapons, Torvan continued. Not because of their determination, but because of what they would do for each other. A species that loves so fiercely, that hopes so desperately, that fights so hard for those they care about. That is a species you do not want as an enemy. He straightened his back and spoke his final words. Leave them alone. Let them grow. Let them come to the stars in their own time, in their own way. And when they do, greet them as equals, as friends. Because I promise you, the alternative is something this council will not survive. He turned and walked toward the exit. No one tried to stop him at the door. He paused and looked back one more time. I have served this council for 400 years. I have always believed we were the guardians of civilization, the protectors of peace. But today, I saw something that made me question everything. His voice was heavy with exhaustion and something else. Wonder, perhaps? Or fear. I saw a species that has every reason to despair, and yet they hope. A species that has seen the worst of themselves, and yet they try to be better. A species alone in the dark, and yet they look up at the stars and smile. He shook his head slowly. We are not ready for them. I do not know if we ever will be. And with that, Ambassador Torvan Shell, the greatest diplomat the council had ever known, left the chamber and never returned. The council debated for 3 days. In the end, they voted. It was closer than any vote in 300 years. But the decision was made. The quarantine satellites around Earth were recalled. The monitoring stations were shut down. The fence that had surrounded humanity for 2 centuries was taken down. In a small office on the monitoring station, a young technician watched her screens go dark. She checked her orders twice, then began the shutdown process. As she worked, she thought about the species below. The species that had scared the greatest diplomat in the galaxy. The species that was now free. On Earth, no one noticed at first. The satellites had been invisible, the monitoring stations hidden. Humans continued their lives, unaware that anything had changed. But in a small town in Kansas, a young man named Jake looked up at the night sky. The stars seemed brighter tonight somehow. Closer, he smiled. I wonder what's out there, he said to no one in particular. I hope we get to find out someday. Somewhere in the galaxy, Torvan Shell sat alone in his quarters. He was looking at a small object in his hands. A photograph that Dr. Reyes had given him before he left. It showed Betty's diner, with Betty standing in front, waving at the camera. Come back anytime, honey, she had said. There's always pie for a friend. Torvan looked at the photograph for a long time. Then he carefully placed it on his wall, where he could see it every day. The humans were coming. Sooner or later, they would reach the stars. They would meet the council. They would change everything. But Torvan was no longer afraid, because he had seen something in those strange, short-lived, beautiful creatures. Something that gave him hope. They were humanity, and humanity never gave up.